Chapter 1, The Letter That Changed Everything. The letter came on a Wednesday morning, folded twice. Edges frayed. The handwriting so familiar my stomach knotted before I even opened it. Elena. I whispered her name like it was a sin. I hadn't said it out loud in years. But seeing her looping script dragged me back instantly. My fingers hovered over the paper, debating whether to tear it in half or throw it in the fire. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table and read, coming back to town. I need to see you. One last time. There's something I have to tell you. I've waited 7 years for your forgiveness. 7 years. She made it sound like time had been a gift she'd wrapped for me, when in reality, every one of those years had been a slow climb out of the pit she'd thrown me into. I crumpled the letter and tossed it on the table. From the doorway, Lena's voice broke the silence. What's that? Nothing. I lied. Liar. She crossed the room, snatched up the letter, and read it before I could stop her. Her eyebrows shot up. Elena. She's back, apparently. And she wants to see you? Lena let out a short, bitter laugh. Tell me you're not actually thinking about it. I shrugged, though the truth was already burning in my chest. I'm thinking about it. Why? What could she possibly say after everything? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Because maybe part of me still wanted an answer to a question I never stopped asking. Why wasn't I enough? Lena sat across from me, her gaze sharp. You don't owe her anything. You know, not your time, not your forgiveness. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. And yet, she's coming anyway. The rest of the day passed in a haze. At work, I kept catching myself drifting into old memories. Elena's laugh on the balcony at night, the way she'd say my name softly when she thought I was asleep, then, like a sledgehammer, the image of her with Marcus would smash it all apart. By evening, I'd read the letter 3 more times each time. It cut deeper, not because of the words, but because she thought she had the right to stand in front of me after what she'd done. That night, Lena cornered me in the living room. You're not going to let her rewrite history, are you? What do you mean? She's going to come here, cry in front of everyone, make it sound like she was the victim. People will forget what she did. You'll look like the bad guy for not forgiving her. She can't erase the truth. I said. Lena's eyes softened. She doesn't have to erase it. She just has to make people doubt it. I hated that she was right. Before bed, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and stood by the window. The town looked the same as it had 7 years ago. Same flickering street lamp on the corner. Same stray cat darting between the shadows. The only difference was me. I had built walls around myself. Thick ones. No one got in without a fight. And now Elena wanted to walk right through them, carrying 7 years of silence like a peace offering. I drained the glass and set it down. Fine, I muttered to myself. I'll hear what you have to say. The next morning, I told Lena my decision. You're making a mistake, she said. Maybe, I replied, pulling on my jacket. But I'd rather face her once then. Spend another 7 years wondering what she'd have said. By afternoon, the whispers had already started. In a town like ours, nothing stayed quiet for long. Daniel texted me. She's coming for the community gathering on Saturday. She's planning to speak. You should be there. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I will. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I thought about the last time I'd seen her, the way her hands trembled, the way Marcus wouldn't look at me. I thought about the humiliation of telling my mother the wedding was off, about the look in her eyes when she realized why. I remembered swearing to myself that I'd never give either of them the chance to hurt me again. And yet here I was. Lena's voice came from the hallway. You're still up. Yeah. She leaned against the doorframe. If you go, promise me one thing. Don't let her decide how the story ends. I gave a small smile. Don't worry. This time, the endings. Mine. Chapter 2. 7 years ago. If you want to know why I've avoided Elena for 7 years, you have to understand what happened that night. It was a Thursday, 2 weeks before our wedding. I come home early from work, carrying a bag of her favorite pastries from the little bakery near the station. She'd been stressed about the seating arrangements, and well, I thought I could make her smile. When I opened the apartment door, I heard voices, low, muffled, and to closed Elena. I called that silence, then a hurried shuffle. I stepped into the living room and saw them. Marcus, my best friend since I was 8, and Elena, my fiancée. They weren't kissing, but they didn't have to be. The way she jerked her hand back from his, the way he couldn't meet my eyes. I knew. What the hell is this? My voice cracked, halfway between a shout and a plea. It's not what you think, Elena started. Marcus spoke over her. I should go. The hell you should. I dropped the bag of pastries onto the couch. The box tumbled open, spilling custard-filled buns onto the cushions. Explain. Now. Elena stepped toward me, hands trembling. I was going to tell you when. Before or after the vows. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. It just happened, okay. Just happened. I stared at him. You don't trip and fall into someone's arms. Marcus, his jaw clenched. It wasn't planned. Does that make it better? I snapped. Elena's eyes filled with tears. It was a mistake. I still love you. I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You love me. You've been sneaking around with my best friend. And you love me. It wasn't like that, she shouted, her voice shaking. I turned to Marcus. How long? He hesitated. How long? 3 months. He muttered. The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. 3 months. 90 days of lies. 90 days of looking me in the eye like nothing was wrong. I felt something inside me go still. Not anger, not even heartbreak. Just emptiness. I picked up my keys. Get out. I told Marcus. Wait. I'm out. He left without looking back. Eleanor reached for me. Please, just let me explain. I stepped away. No. Whatever. This is whatever you are now. I don't want it. Her lip trembled. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said, opening the door. We're done. I don't remember leaving the apartment. I just remember walking, blocks and blocks, past the bakery, past the park where we'd had our first date. By the time I stopped, I was standing outside my mother's house. She opened the door, took one look at me, and knew. She didn't ask questions. She just let me sit in silence. The next few days were a blur. Phone calls I didn't answer, texts I deleted without reading. Marcus tried once to come by. Belina intercepted him. Elena left messages. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. Please, talk to me. I didn't respond. The wedding was canceled. Invitations torn up. People whispered, of course. In a town like ours, scandals were a form of entertainment. Some said I was overreacting. Others pitied me. I didn't care. 1 week later, I saw them together again, not touching, but standing too close, talking like nothing had happened. That's when I knew it wasn't a time lapse or a drunken night they regretted. It was a choice. And if they could choose each other over me once, they could do it again. So I left, packed what I could fit into suitcases, and moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. I cut them both out of my life. 7 years. No calls, no letters, no accidental run-dashings. Until now. That night in the present, lying in bed, I can still hear my voice from 7 years ago. Cold, final, unshakable. We're done. But as much as I wanted to believe it, the letter on my kitchen table told me the truth. I wasn't done. Not yet. Chapter 3. The return news traveled faster than I thought it would. By Friday morning, I couldn't step into the coffee shop without hearing her name whisper behind my back. She's here staying at the Hartley's old place. He did. You hear she's coming for the community gathering. They say she's going to talk to him. I pretended not to hear. But the truth was, my chest tightened with every mention. 7 years of silence. And now it was like the whole town was holding its breath. Lena cornered me in the kitchen. It's starting already. People are taking sides. I raise an eyebrow. Taking sides over what? Over whether you should forgive her. Half of them think it's romantic. The other half think you'd be an idiot. I poured myself a coffee. Which half are you in? She didn't hesitate. The half that says you don't owe her a single word. By noon, I got a message from Daniel. She's here. Wants to see you. Says she's going to explain everything. I stared at the text for a while before replying. When Saturday night, after the gathering. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, turning her letter over in my hands like it might suddenly reveal the answer to everything. Why now? Why after all this time? The cynical part of me figured she was after some kind of public absolution, a way to paint herself as the one who had suffered most. But there was another part of me, smaller but still alive, that wondered if she had been waiting for the right moment to tell me something I didn't know. I hated that I even cared. The next morning, I ran into Mrs. Miller outside the post office. She was one of those people who always knew everyone's business. You heard she's back, she asked, her tone heavy with intrigue. I've heard, I said flatly. She looks different, thinner, tired, like she's been carrying a weight. 4 years. I forced a shrug. That's her problem, not mine. Mrs. Miller's eyes narrowed like she could see straight through me. You'll go, though, won't you? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She already knew. By the afternoon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe. Hello, silence for a second. Then, it's me. Her voice hit me like a punch. I gripped the phone tighter. Elena. I don't want to fight, she said quietly. Good, I replied, because I'm not interested in fighting you. I need you to hear me out. Saturday, please. I stared at the wall. You've had 7 years to say whatever it is. Why now? Her voice cracked. Because I can't carry it anymore. I wanted to ask what it was, but I hung up instead. Lena found me in the living room afterward. Was that her? I nodded. What did she say? Nothing, I believe. That night, I dreamed of the day I left her, except in the dream. She chased after me. In real life, she hadn't. She'd let me walk away without a fight. When I woke up, I realized I was gripping the bedsheet like I had been holding on to something in my sleep. Maybe a version of her that no longer existed. By Saturday afternoon, the town hall was buzzing. I stood outside for a long time, staring at the open doors. Daniel spotted me and walked over. You ready for this? No. He gave a short laugh. At least you're honest. I stepped inside and scanned the room. People were already seated, chatting in low voices. At the front, Elena stood with a few others. She looked different, just like Mrs. Miller had said. Her hair was shorter, her eyes tired, her frame smaller than I remembered. But when she turned and saw me, the same flicker of something, recognition, regret, maybe both, crossed her face. I looked away before it could catch me. I found a seat in the back, far from her, far from anyone who might ask questions. This wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't reconciliation. This was me, finally deciding whether I was going to let her voice rewrite my story. Chapter 4. The invitation. Sunday morning. I was halfway through my first coffee when someone knocked on the door. It wasn't a polite knock either. 3 sharp raps, impatient, like whoever it was didn't have time for hesitation. When I opened the door, Mrs. Ward stood there, my mother's oldest friend, the kind of woman who could make you feel guilty just by looking at you. Can I come in? She asked. You already are, I muttered, stepping aside. She walked in without ceremony and sat at the kitchen table, like she owned it. I saw you at the hall yesterday. I wasn't hiding. No, she said, but you weren't exactly there either. You sat in the back, arms crossed, like you were waiting for the fire drill to end. I sipped my coffee. Maybe I was. Mrs. Ward leaned forward, resting her hands on the table. She wants to see you. I'm aware. She's different now. Life hasn't been kind to her. I gave a short laugh. Life hasn't been kind to a lot of people. She made a mistake, but I cut her off. A mistake. Forgetting to lock your front door is a mistake. Leaving your headlights on is a mistake. What she did was a choice. Mrs. Ward didn't flinch. You think I don't know? I was there when your mother found out. I saw what it did to her, but I also know what the last 7 years have done to Elena. Not my problem. She's not asking you to marry her again. She just wants to talk. I stared at her, and what? Cry in front of the whole town. Make me look like the villain for not forgiving her. Mrs. Ward's eyes softened, but her voice didn't. You think this is about her reputation. It's not. This is about you. About whether you're ready to stop letting her live rent-free in your head. I set my cup down harder than I meant to. I'm not the one chasing her down after 7 years. No, she said quietly. But you're still talking about her like she left yesterday. Lena walked in, clearly catching the tail end of the conversation. Mrs. Ward, she said, you're wasting your time. Mrs. Ward smiled at her. I never waste my time, dear. Lena crossed her arms. If she wants to tell him something, she can write it in another letter. No need for public drama. Mrs. Ward looked between us. She's speaking at the gathering tonight. You should be there. Let her say her piece. Then decide if you want to respond. I frowned. Why should I give her the stage? You don't have to give her anything. Mrs. Ward said, standing up. Just show up, sometimes. Silence says more than words. After she left, Lena sat down where she'd been. You're not actually thinking of going, are you? I rubbed the back of my neck. Part of me wants to, just to see what she says. And the other part wants to pretend she's still a ghost. Lena sighed. You're playing right into her hands. If you go, you're giving her the chance to control the story. I shook my head. Not if I control my own ending. The rest of the day was slow, but the tension sat in my chest like a knot. I tried reading. I tried working. Nothing stuck. My mind kept looping back to Mrs. Ward's words. Stop letting her live rent-free in your head. By evening, I'd made up my mind. Going. I told Lena as I grabbed my jacket. She groaned. I swear, if she makes you look like the bad guy, she won't, I said, my voice steady. Because I'm not going there to forgive her. Lena narrowed her eyes. Then why? I paused at the door to make sure she knows I haven't forgotten. When I stepped outside, the air was cold and sharp. Across town, the community hall lights glowed against the dark sky. Whatever Elena was planning to say tonight, I'd be ready. At least. That's what I told myself. Chapter 5. The gathering community hall was already full when I got there. The smell of coffee and polish would mix with a low hum of chatter. I stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the crowd, neighbors, old classmates, even people I barely recognized, all crammed into folding chairs. Their eyes darting toward the front of the room where she stood. Elena. She was speaking to Mrs. Miller and a few others, smiling politely, but her hands were clasped tight in front of her. I recognized the nervous habit instantly. Daniel appeared at my side. Thought you'd chicken out. He whispered, not tonight. I said, you want to sit in the front? No, back's fine. The mayor gave some opening remarks about community spirit and unity, the usual filler. But no one was here for that. They were here for her, finally. Elena stepped up to the microphone. The hall went quiet. She took a deep breath. Some of you know why I'm here. Some of you probably don't. But I think it's time I told the truth. Her voice was softer than I remembered, but steady. 7 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I hurt someone I loved, someone I was supposed to marry. I broke his trust, and I've lived with that every day since. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I didn't come back to make excuses. I came back because I owe him, and all of you, an apology. I shifted in my seat. She was doing exactly what Lena had predicted, crafting the narrative. She went on. Back then, I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I was chasing happiness. But I was wrong. I wasn't strong enough to face my own fears. So I heard the one person who had always been there for me. I didn't understand the damage I caused until it was too late. A woman in the front row dabbed at her eyes. I've been away for 7 years, trying to become someone better. I've tried to make peace with what I did. But the truth is, there's only one person whose forgiveness would mean anything to me. She looked directly at me. The room followed her gaze. I felt dozens of eyes turn in my direction. Elena, the mayor started, but she raised her hand to stop him. I'm not here to force him into anything. I just need to say this. I am sorry. More sorry than I can put into words. And if he can find it in his heart to forgive me, I would be grateful for the rest of my life. Her voice cracked just enough to sound genuine. A man behind me whispered, "Poor thing. Poor thing." I clenched my fists. She was standing up there turning betrayal into tragedy. Her tragedy, and people were buying it. Daniel leaned over. "You gonna say something?" I didn't answer. "Not yet," Elena continued. "I know I don't deserve his kindness, but I also know that holding on to anger only poisons the heart. If there's any part of him that can forgive me, I hope he'll let it free us both." More murmurs, some nods. I saw Mrs. Ward looking at me expectantly. The mayor stepped back to the podium. "Thank you, Elena. That took a lot of courage." Now, I stood. The scrape of my chair against the floor cut through the room. All eyes were on me now. I walked to the aisle, slow and deliberate, my footsteps echoing against the wooden floor. Elena's face shifted. Hope flickered there, mixed with fear. When I stopped halfway to the front, I didn't look at the mayor. I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at her. 7 years ago, I said, my voice carrying, "You didn't just make a mistake. You shattered my life. You took the one friendship I thought was unbreakable and the one love I thought was forever, and you burned them both down in the same night." She swallowed hard, but didn't look away. "I rebuilt myself from the ashes you left behind, brick by brick, year by year, and I did it without you. So don't stand here and tell me this is about freeing us both." The crowd was dead silent. "This is about you wanting to feel better about what you did. You don't get to walk back into my life and turn my pain into your redemption arc." Her lips parted, but I kept going. "You want forgiveness? Pray for. But don't expect to get it from me." Gasps rippled through the hall. I turned and walked back to my seat without another word. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the mayor awkwardly cleared his throat and muttered something about refreshments in the next room. But the damage, or the truth, had already been delivered. Elena stayed frozen at the front, her hands trembling, her eyes glossy dot, and for the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel like the one who had been left standing in the wreckage. Chapter 6. My turn. Asterisk. I didn't plan on speaking again. When I sat back down after calling her out, I thought I was done, thought I'd said my piece. But then I saw the way people were looking at her, some with pity, some with admiration, like she'd just survived the storm instead of caused one dotted burn. Elena stayed by the microphone, gripping it like a lifeline. Her voice wavered. "I know I can't change the past, but I can't let the last thing between us be hate. I have to try." That word "try" made something inside me snap. I stood again, slower this time. "You want to try? Fine. Let's try telling the truth for once." A ripple went through the room. "Elena," I said, my voice steady, "do you want to tell them what you were doing 3 months before our wedding?" She froze. "No." "Then I will. You were with my best friend. Not one night. Not one mistake. 3 months. Every day you looked me in the eye. Planned a future with me. While you were with him." Someone in the front row gasped. "You think I didn't know the details? I know where you met. I know what you said. I know that the morning you picked out flowers for our wedding, you'd been with him the night before." Elena's lips trembled. "That's not. It's exactly what happened." I cut in. "And the worst part, you didn't even have the decency to admit it until I walked in and caught you." Marcus, who had been sitting near the back, shifted uncomfortably. I turned my gaze on him. "And you didn't just betray me. You destroyed the friendship we built since we were 8, and you still sat at my table like nothing happened." He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't bother. I'm not here to hear your excuses either." The air in the hall felt heavy, like everyone was breathing slower. I looked back at Elena. "You came here tonight thinking you could wrap your betrayal in pretty words and a shaky voice, and maybe people would forget the details. But I haven't forgotten a single one." She blinked rapidly, tears threatening. "And you know what's worse? You didn't just betray me. You humiliated me. You took my trust, my love, and you used them like bargaining chips for something you thought was better. Then, when it didn't work out the way you wanted, you waited 7 years to see if I'd clean the slate for you." Someone whispered, "My God," from the side of the room. I stepped closer to the aisle. "So here's the truth, Elena. I'm not here to play the villain in your redemption story. I'm not here to give you closure so you can sleep better at night. You lost the right to ask me for anything the moment you chose him over me." Her eyes searched mine, desperate. "I didn't choose him over you." I was confused. I was scared. I shook my head. "No, you were selfish. And now, you're scared of living with that for the rest of your life." Daniel caught my eye from the corner, silently telling me I had made my point. But there was one more thing I needed to say before I sat down. "You want forgiveness. That's between you and God. But for me, you get honesty. And the honest truth is, I don't hate you anymore. I just don't care enough to let you back into my life." That landed harder than I expected. Her face crumpled. I turned to go back to my seat, but Elena's voice cracked behind me. "So that's it. After all these years, that's all you have to say to me?" I stopped, slowly. I looked over my shoulder. "No," I said quietly. "That's not all. But the rest you'll hear in a moment." And that was the moment the hall collectively leaned forward, because they knew something was coming. Something final. Something that wasn't going to sound like forgiveness. Chapter 7. The sentence that froze the room was so quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the microphone still clutched in her hand. Everyone was staring at me, waiting. I could feel the weight of it pressing against my shoulders. The collective curiosity of a crowd that didn't know whether they were about to witness mercy or blood. I turned fully toward her. Her cheeks were flushed, her breath uneven, her fingers white-knuckled around the mic. "You want to know my final word on this?" I asked. She nodded, slow, like even the movement hurt. I stepped forward until there were only a few feet between. "US 7 years, Elena. 7 years of silence, and in that time, I learned something about forgiveness." Her lips parted. "What?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "Forgiveness is a gift, and I don't give gifts to thieves." The sentence dropped like a stone into a still pond. Gas echoed. Somewhere in the back, a chair scraped against the floor as someone shifted uncomfortably. Elena's eyes widened, then blinked fast, like she was trying to hold back tears. For a heartbeat, she looked like she might speak, but nothing came out. Her throat moved, her lips trembled, and then she just stopped. The silence was suffocating. No coughs, no whispers, just the sound of her shallow breathing and the pounding in my ears. I didn't look away. I wanted her to see that there was no malice left in me, no anger, no lingering desire for revenge, just truth, cold and final. Behind me, someone muttered, "Damn," under their breath. The mayor shifted nervously at the side of the stage, glancing between us like he wasn't sure if he should step in or let it play out. Daniel was still in the back, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on me. Lena had leaned forward in her seat, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Elena finally lowered the microphone. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for the first time since she walked in tonight, she looked small. Not fragile, not tragic, just diminished. I turned toward the aisle, but her voice came, quiet, shaky. "Do you really believe I'm a thief?" I stopped. "You stole the one thing I can't replace. The version of myself that trusted without question. You took it, and you didn't give it back." She flinched, like each word was a blow. I can't undo what I did, she said, her voice breaking. But I thought maybe we could be human again to each other. I shook my head. We are being human. Humans set boundaries. Humans protect themselves. That's what I'm doing. Someone near the front tried to clap, one awkward, hesitant sound. But it died instantly under the weight of the room. I walked down the aisle slowly, every step echoing. No one spoke. No one even shifted in their seat until I reached the back. Just before I reached the door, I turned one last time. She was still standing there, clutching the mic like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I didn't raise my voice. I hope you find the forgiveness you're looking for, Elena. But it won't be from me, this time. No one gasped. They didn't need to. The words were heavy enough on their own. I pushed open the door and stepped into the cold night air. The sound of the hall door swinging shut behind me was the only applause I wanted. Outside, the quiet was different, not the tense, held breath silence from inside, but the open stillness of an empty street at night. The air was crisp. My breath came in steady clouds. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. The finality, the closure I didn't even realize I'd been chasing. Daniel slipped out a few minutes later. You know you just became the villain in half their eyes, right? I gave a short laugh. I can live with that. And the other half, they'll call it justice. We walked down the street together, the glow from the hall fading behind. U.S. She's not going to forget that line, Daniel said after a while. Good, I replied. It wasn't for her to forget. It was for me to remember. When I got home, Lena was waiting on the porch. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a mug of tea and sat beside me. After a while, she said, You froze the whole damn room. I smirked. That was the point. Chapter 8, Aftermath. Morning after. The whole town felt different. Not quieter, just sharper. Like everyone was watching their words, waiting to see what I'd do next. At the diner, conversation stopped when I walked in. I could feel eyes on my back as I slid into my usual booth. The waitress, Janine, gave me a look somewhere between pity and admiration. Coffee? She asked. Please. She poured it, then leaned in. That was one hell of a line last night. I smirked. News travels fast. In this town. It doesn't travel. It sprints. She lowered her voice. Some people think you were too harsh, and you. She hesitated. I think you said what needed to be said, but you're not gonna get peace if you keep turning it over in your head. I didn't answer. By midday, Daniel called. You've gone viral, he said. I frowned. Viral? Okay. Not internet viral, town viral. Mrs. Miller's been replaying it for everyone who wasn't there. And apparently, Marcus left early. Didn't say a word to anyone. Good. You know she's still here, right, Elena? Yeah. She hasn't left yet. I spent the afternoon on the porch, drinking tea and trying not to think about her. But the truth was, she was everywhere. In the glances people gave me, in the half-finished sentences they dropped when I walked into a room. Lena came out and sat beside me. You've got the whole town buzzing, she said. I noticed. Some think you finally got your closure, and the rest, they think you're cold. I sipped my tea. Let them. That evening, I ran into Mrs. Ward outside the grocery store. You could have handled it differently, she said. I handled it honestly. Honesty isn't always kindness. She didn't come looking for kindness. She came looking for absolution. I'm not in the business of handing that out, Mrs. Ward sighed. You're your mother's son. She never forgave anyone who wronged her either. I didn't correct her. The next day, Daniel showed up unannounced. You might want to hear this, he said. What? She's leaving tonight. Good. He gave me a look. She's not going quietly. Word is, she told a few people she wishes she'd fought harder for you back then. I let out a short laugh. She had her chance. She chose him. Daniel leaned against the railing. You think you'll ever forgive her? No, not even for yourself. I paused. I don't need to forgive her to move on. That night, I went for a walk. The streets were nearly empty, the air cold enough to sting Dot as I passed the Hartley's old place. I saw her car parked out front, lights on inside. For a moment, I stood there, staring at the warm glow through the window. A silhouette moved past, hers, unmistakable even now. I thought about knocking, about saying something, anything, that might soften the edges of what I left her with. But then I remembered the look on her face when I told her I don't give gifts to thieves. And I kept walking. The following morning, she was gone. No note, no final word. Just the faint smell of her perfume still clinging to the hall from 2 nights ago. Daniel called later. She's not coming back. Good, I said again. And this time, I meant it. That evening, Lena found me in the backyard, staring at the fading sunset. Do you feel lighter? She asked. A little. You didn't just answer her, she said. You answered the part of yourself that was still waiting. I glanced at her. You think I was still waiting? She smiled faintly. If you weren't, that one line wouldn't have hit her, or the rest of them, so hard. As the last streaks of orange faded from the sky, I realized she was right. I hadn't just closed a chapter. I'd burned the whole book. And for the first time in 7 years, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. Chapter 9, the unsent letter. 3 days passed before I even thought about her again. Not in the way I had for years. No late-night spirals. No imagined arguments where I finally said the perfect thing. Just a flicker. A passing thought while making coffee. I poured the water, heard it hiss over the grounds, and out of nowhere, I wondered if she'd made it home safely. That was all it took. By noon, I was at my desk, staring at a blank page. The pen felt heavy in my hand, like it knew, better than I did, where this was heading. I told myself I was just going to write, not to send, not to deliver, just to get the words out. Elena, I'm not writing this to change anything. You asked for my forgiveness, and I told you the truth. I can't give it, but there are things I didn't say, things I don't want to carry anymore. The words came easily at first. I told her about the first week after the betrayal, how the world felt like it had been drained of color, how every street corner seemed to hold a ghost of her, how I hated Marcus, but hated myself more for not seeing it coming. I told her about my mother, how she cried quietly in the kitchen that night, thinking I couldn't hear. I told her how I'd rebuilt brick by brick, until her name was no longer the first thought I had in the morning. And then I wrote something I hadn't planned. I hope you become someone better because of this. Not for me, for yourself. I stopped there. Read the page over twice. The pen hovered, but I didn't add another word. It was honest. But it wasn't what I wanted her to have, because sending it would undo everything I'd built. It would be like reopening a door I'd locked for good. And more than that, it would give her something she didn't deserve. A last word. Lena came in, leaning against the doorway. What's that? A letter I'm not sending. She raised an eyebrow. To her. I nodded. Want me to read it? No. I already know what it says. That's enough. She glanced at the page. You're gonna burn it, aren't you? Yeah, I said quietly. We went out back. The sky was dull and gray, a thin wind cutting across the yard. I struck a match, and the flame flared to life. The paper caught quickly, curling black at the edges. The ink warping under the heat. It burned fast. But I watched every second, watched the words twist into shapes I couldn't read anymore, until there was nothing left but ash. Lena crossed her arms. You know, that was probably the most poetic thing you've done in years. I gave a small laugh. I'm not trying to be poetic. Then what are you trying to be? Done. We stood there a while longer, letting the wind carry the ashes away. I thought about what it would have meant if I'd sent it, how she might have read it over and over, picking it apart for hope. And that was the truth I'd finally accepted. I didn't want her to have hope. Not about me. That night, I slept without dreams. In the morning, I woke to a sky washed clean by rain, the air sharp and new. I made coffee, took it out to the porch, and sat in the quiet. The letter was gone. She was gone, and so was the version of me that would have needed her to hear any of it. Chapter 10. Moving forward, cemetery was quiet, except for the sound of leaves shifting in the wind. I hadn't been here in months, not because I avoided it, but because I didn't feel the need. Now, I wasn't sure why I'd come. Maybe to put the whole thing somewhere permanent. My mother's headstone sat in its familiar place under the oak. I brushed away a layer of leaves and crouched down. Hey, Mom. The words felt clumsy at first, but easier after a breath. You'd have had an opinion about all this, I said. You always did. You have told me to keep my dignity, to hold my head high, to not let her back in. And, well, it did that. I let out a small laugh, though I doubt you'd have approved of the delivery. The breeze lifted a strand of hair across my face. I took that as permission to keep talking. She came back after 7 years, wanted forgiveness, wanted to tell her story to the whole town. I gave her mine instead, and I meant every word. I paused. It wasn't about hurting her, Mom. It was about letting her know she doesn't get to write the ending. That's mine. Always has been. I stayed quiet for a while, listening to the wind move through the oak. You know what's strange? I said finally. I don't feel angry anymore. Not at her. Not even at Marcus. I just don't feel anything. And maybe that's the real win. Not forgiving. Not forgetting. Just moving on without them. Behind me, the crunch of footsteps on gravel made me turn. It was Lena, holding the coffees. She handed me one and sat down next to me in the grass. You've been here a while, she said. Talking to Mom. She listening. Always, Lena. Took a sip. So are you done? I thought about it. Yeah. I think I am. Good, she said. Because you deserve a life that isn't defined by what she did. We sat there together for a long time. I told her about the letter I'd burned, about how it felt watching it turn to ash. She smiled and said, that's your version of a clean slate. Maybe she was right. When we finally stood to leave, I glanced back at the headstone. I'll be all right, I told her. Really? And for the first time in years, I wasn't saying it to convince myself. I actually believed it. We walked back to the car, and as the road curved out of the cemetery, I rolled down the window. The air smelled like autumn, crisp, earthy, alive. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. Later that evening, I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the last of the daylight fade. The town felt different now, not because anything had changed, but because I had. No letters waiting on the table, no phone calls to dread, no questions left unanswered. Just quiet. I didn't think of Elena much anymore after that, and when I did, it was just a fact in my life, like an old scar, a reminder of a pain that healed, but never quite vanished. And that was fine. Scars tell you where you've been. They don't have to dictate where you're going. When the streetlights flickered on, I leaned back in my chair and let the night settle in. Forgiveness hadn't been the key. Letting go had. And I was finally free.